Hi, welcome back to the Be the Cake podcast with me, your host, Liz Campbell. Today, I want to talk to you about the fact that reality literally behaves as you expect it to. But the issue that you have, in fact, the issue that most people have, not just you, and the issue that I've had in the past, and the thing that really people need to be aware of is the fact that most of the time you are not aware of what you're expecting, and actually most of your expectations are actually based on patterns that were created during your childhood, during your school years, during your younger life when you were impressionable and you took on certain things to be true about the world without even realizing it, and you were conditioned by your environment. Okay, so most of the time, if you are not getting the results that you want in your life, if your life is not working out the way that you want it to, it just simply means that you have been conditioned to expect, at a very deep level, less than you desire. And that goes hand in hand with things like lack of self-worth, lack of self-belief, lack of self-esteem, all of that kind of stuff, all of which is ultimately reversible and is coincidentally one of the big things that I help clients with when I work with them, whether it's in a group setting or one-to-one. But in actual fact, this whole kind of idea of you are just the product of your childhood and change isn't possible is an absolute fucking nonsense that needs to be understood as such, because having that belief system in place that you are who you are, you can't change, a leopard can't change their spots. You can think of so many different sort of adages that get thrown around like confetti within conversations, within the media, with, old wives' tales, whatever you want to call them. So many things that are actually, when you find them popping up in your head, you can actually go, oh, right, so I've been conditioned to believe that. The simple fact of the matter is that reality behaves as you expect it to. It is completely malleable according to what's going on with you energetically and the structures that you actually have in place already. And all of that can be changed at any time with the right work. This is the thing. It's to do with understanding that rather than looking at yourself as being some kind of fixed point in space and time, like a block that is completely solid and can't be shaped and changed, you need to start to look at yourself as being a little bit like Michelangelo when he saw the angel in the marble and decided to set it free with his tools. Okay, understanding how to actually see your own potential, or if you can't do that, if you're not in a space where you're capable of seeing your own potential for yourself, then spend time with or invest in working with people who can see it very clearly, even when you can't, who can point it out to you and help you to actually adopt this, what I'm going to call an elevated view of yourself and your capabilities and all the rest of it, rather than being stuck in a false self-perception based on shit that you got told by the adults around you when you were a kid, that embedded itself and encrypted itself and ended up becoming the set of instructions that are in the background running your life and causing you to have an experience that's less than enjoyable. Do you see what I'm saying? Ultimately, no one can manage your expectations other than you. And as reality literally behaves as you expect it to, it's up to you to manage your expectations in such a way that you elevate your experience of reality. That's essentially all that manifestation is. What you're doing is you are managing your structure and your energy in such a way and with such skill. And this is one of the things that I mentor people in, is actually energetic self-mastery, okay, and alchemy. So that's part of what I do. I also work with people who aren't interested in sort of understanding the dynamics of self-mastery and actually just want to create results. That's also possible, but my favourite thing is working with people to actually help them create mastery of themselves and actually understand how they work, how they're functioning, how to do stuff, how to literally create magic in their lives without using what I'm going to say the standard manifestation techniques, some of which are very laborious, some of which are quite boring, some of which just might not feel like they resonate with you. The things like writing things out millions of times and all that kind of stuff, you know, if that doesn't float your boat, you don't have to force yourself to do it. There are so many ways that you can manifest things, and my speciality is actually in cutting through all of that and actually doing stuff in a way that's fast, that's easy, that's super powerful and super effective, because we're working directly with the energetics of everything rather than laborious journaling processes. And that's not to say that I'm against journalism journaling even in any way, shape or form, because in actual fact journaling is a really, 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 really good way of getting very, very clear on what it is that you actually want and what it is that you are trying to tell yourself from a higher perspective that you might have been blocking out from the human level. Okay, so it's a brilliant way of getting clarity on where it is you're going next, what it is that you truly desire, and so on and so forth. But it is not what I use to create. Unlike a lot of people who swear by doing stuff like that, I've always found that trying to journal as a creative tool for me, other than writing down ideas I'm having, is next to useless. It's just the way that I'm built. I came here to create magic and to teach actual magic, and to do it without filling pages and pages and pages of A4. You know, some people love doing that kind of stuff. I don't. So I do things a different way. But ultimately, your reality is always up to you. If you're experiencing Groundhog Day, it is because you have patterns going on that haven't been shifted yet, which are causing you to run what I like to refer to as a time loop. Okay. And the time loop will always be based on some kind of expectation that has you going around in circles. It's really quite simple. It's a series of feedback loops. The whole experience of living is a series of feedback loops where we're putting things out energetically and then we're getting that reflected back to us in different ways. Okay. And in order to change what's reflected back, we have to change what's being put out. Now, most of the time what we're actually transmitting is completely out of our awareness. Okay, your expectations are a transmission. Okay, if you expect for people to let you down all the time, that's going to be your experience. If you expect that, and we're talking about at a deep level here, we're talking about the unconscious and subconscious levels. If subconsciously and unconsciously you're expecting to fail all the time, that's what you're always going to experience. If you're expecting that things are going to be more difficult than they are, that's what you get, and so on and so forth. Your expectations around money are a huge, huge part of how you get to experience money and abundance and wealth and all of that stuff. If you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop, that's another big one. You know, all of these things, all of these habits that we have in terms of the way that we think, the way that we feel about things, the way that we direct our energy towards stuff. Okay. And this is where I get to pull out the analogy of, if you're an archer and you're shooting at a target, you need to make sure you're not just pointing the arrow at the target. Okay. If you look at the way that an archer does things, you'll actually see that they don't just aim the arrow. They are aiming the bow, they're aiming their eyes, they are angling their limbs, and they are standing in a manner where everything is pointing at the target. And if you do archery and you're not doing that, you're highly likely, especially if you're a beginner, to actually not hit the target at all and send it flying off to hit, I don't know, the neighbour's cat or like a nearby house or whatever, because the arrow, basically, because you don't have everything focused in the same direction. And it's much the same with our consciousness. If our consciousness is pointed in 50 million different directions at once, then we don't get the results that we expect when we take the actions that we take, okay? You have to focus your consciousness fully. And when I'm talking about consciousness, I'm talking about all the different layers of it. You have to focus that fully when you take the action and before you take the action, and also kind of afterwards, from the point of view of actually, when I say focus fully afterwards, it has to be focused fully on the fact it's already done. So there's no doubt, no wavering, okay? No, what you could call the arrow whip. After the arrow leaves your sights and is travelling towards the target. It's the same thing. Archery is really, I tell you what, archery is really, really good practice. If you want to do something practical that will help you focus, that will help you to sort of drop into a meditative state, you could do a lot worse than taking up archery. It's a moving meditation. You become one when you're doing it well with the bow, with the arrow, and with the target. You become sort of this seamless line, as it were, essentially. And manifestation's much the same. It is much the same. The expectations that you have can't be pointing in every fucking direction if you want to have the things that you're intending to manifest actually show up. You can't be like, oh, yes, I'm going to manifest, for example, £30,000 because I really want to do whatever with it. I don't know, loft extension or something. I have no idea how much they cost nowadays. And the last time I looked at something like this, a loft extension was probably around ballpark of like 30 grand. So say you wanted to extend your loft and turn it into a bedroom from being just an attic space. And you decided that you wanted £30,000 to do that job with. You couldn't go, I'm going to create £30,000 and then literally muddy it up from the background with, oh, but I've never had £30,000 before, so I don't know what that feels like, and I don't know if I could handle holding that amount of money in one go. Where would I get it from? What if something bad happens to it once I've started manifesting? Yeah, there's so many different things you can come up with that will literally muddy the fucking waters for you and cause all sorts of the equivalent of arrow whip to a degree where you're going to miss the target completely and then go, oh, well, that didn't work. So obviously I'm not capable of manifesting anything. It's just like, no, well, actually, what you did manifest was the results of your focus being in 50 million different places at once and your lack of self-belief being really evident. Do you see what I'm saying? So, understanding that you are always responsible for everything that you are experiencing. And this is the one where people will throw tomatoes at me. But it's like, oh, but surely, oh, that's victim shaming and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. If you were to look at, and this is something where I really want to go into this, if you were to look at the layers and levels of your consciousness, not just from your perspective, okay, but from the perspective of every single human being that has contributed towards your line of DNA and RNA, and this is why I work with the DNA, okay, and from that point of view and the esoteric side of things, understanding the Akashic records and everything else, you understand that your consciousness and your thought processes aren't just yours. They are based on all the traumas that your parents, their parents, their parents' parents, and so on and so forth on both sides have experienced, okay? So when we talk about breaking the chains and being like the people who come in as the code breakers for their family to actually like change the family karma, the ancestral karma, okay? Essentially, if you see yourself as that, and you might not yet, but you might do after you've been listening to this, you start to look at patterns of behaviour in your family, you start to realise that, of course, everything that happens, you can start to see the connections between what happened with your mum and your dad and their parents and so on and so forth, and your experience in life right now, okay, because that is part of your consciousness. And you can change that when you do the right work. There are lots of different healing modalities that deal with this, okay? I work with this stuff when I'm working with people. You can look at theta healing. There's quite a few different modalities that do specifically go into the ancestral side of things, but it's a big part of it, okay? The thoughts and dreams of your ancestors are directly affecting your life today, and there are ways to change that stuff. So it's your expectations, but also your ancestors before you, because you're a product on a physical level of them. On a spiritual level, you're not, but on a physical level, you are, okay? And that physical level is really important, because when you start to look at the whole E equals MC squared thing, you realise how much power there is at the atomic level within the human body. Look at what happened when they split the atom. Okay, all of that power was released. You have trillions of atoms in your physical body. All of that density is a lot of power. There's a lot of power in being physically embodied. Your body is actually incredibly powerful and has a huge bearing. Your physical body has a huge bearing on how and why and what you're manifesting. And you can work with this stuff to change it. This is why somatic work is powerful for people who are drawn to that stuff. The way that I actually work with the energetics of the physical body, so that the physical body actually shifts without having to do classic somatic work. The somatic work happens sort of automatically. People have spontaneous emotional releases and so on and so forth. Things get released. I'm not just working with the energy field. But, essentially at the end of the day, the body is involved. The body is involved. The body releases things. You will have, sometimes outbursts of tears and so on and so forth as part of the shifting that happens when you do this work properly. If you're doing this work with anyone and you're not having any kind of spontaneous emotional outbursts as a result, it just says to me that the work isn't going deep enough, basically. There should be some level of release going on, whether it's something that you're feeling but not necessarily feeling the need to actually vocally express. You will feel the emotional energy leaving you. Sometimes it might be dramatic. Sometimes there will be tears and there will be anger and there will be all of the other stuff. And sometimes there's a headache that pops up, basically. But ultimately, all of this stuff, as it releases, what happens when you're doing this releasing and you're doing it properly, your expectations change because the patterns are changing. Okay, and then the magical thing happens and your reality changes. So it's all connected. Okay. And having said all of this, I'm going to love you and leave you now, and just leave you with the note that I have over the past few weeks been organising my business in such a way that you can identify what it is that you most want the help with. And actually we have different zones being set up for all of this stuff. We have the money zone, which is open now. It's only $37. Okay. And this is for you if you want to start manifesting more money in your life and you are not currently in a position to be able to invest in one of these big heavyweight, it costs thousands type of courses, $37 basically, and there's a Telegram group that goes with it, and you can come and join that. And we are doing specific energy work, and we are sorting out the shit that's getting in the way of you actually being in your wealth consciousness and starting to experience that in your reality. Okay, we also have the genius zone, which is a level up for those of you who are conscious business owners, creatives, entrepreneurs, or are aspiring to be that, who want to get your shit together and start to really bring your purpose work into a monetized format, okay, in complete alignment with your soul. And we also have the magic zone, which is the alchemical mentorship for those of you who are wanting to actually learn how to work with energy for yourselves and do it in a really powerful way, basically. And that is my top tier. Okay, so leaving you with all of this, I'm sending you so much love, and I'll be back next time with more on the whole subject of manifestation, magic, consciousness, embodiment, and actually having a good time when you're doing it, because if you're not having fun, then what the fuck is the point, really? Mwah.